Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Sales and Cigars. I'm your host, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development. Today we've got another interesting episode. Interesting in a couple of ways. Is one of the ones that I get to learn about something while you're learning. I don't do a lot of research on guests in advance. I try to, um, you know, engage with them in conversation and learn. Sometimes I don't know where things are going, and that's part of the fun. But Per Sjofors is Swedish. He's been in the States. He's run companies, public companies, private companies, and he started his own firm that really help mid-market companies, large companies. He gave several examples of a $10 million company going to $130 million, a $100 million company going to over $1 billion, because of the work that his firm and his team has done with the organization around pricing, market research, messaging. So he takes this idea and helps a company understand that they can raise their prices significantly, helps them understand why, and helps them understand who those customers are, that they will grow, that segment will grow. And the segmentation also helps them understand that they will lose very few customers if they message this properly. And he puts this all together, and with a package that it could be a 6 to 8 week program or a year long program. So it's really enlightening, and I would encourage you, if you're a CEO or an entrepreneur or a sales leader, this is something that you should pay attention to. Per and I are going to have some conversations going forward in the future, because I think we can help each other, and he can definitely help my clients. So go grab a cocktail, go grab a cigar, strap in for another great episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So, Per, I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to jump on our podcast today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Walter, for having me, and I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I hope the audience is going to find it entertaining and educational.
Well, we try to find guests. We try to make sure that our guests are entertaining and interesting. And when I did the little research on just getting past your name, right, there's interest right there. And in what you guys do is not a common thing. So let's jump in right there. Can you talk a little bit about what the company does, and how that mid-market company can find value in your strategies and your offerings?
Yeah, let me start by talking a little bit about the background to why we do what we do, and it all comes down to that I had a chance to run a couple of companies in Europe before I moved here to the US, and here in the US I've run another 4 companies. And in all these companies, just because I was interested in the subject, we did experiments with pricing. We wanted to see how we could drive more sales with price and not necessarily lower price. And some of those experiments worked very well. Others were complete duds. And what I had learned in business school and could read about pricing was so theoretical and academic that it was completely useless information.
Yeah.
So 15 years ago, I decided I was too old and too opinionated to be a hired gun. So I set up my own shop and set up a process that would make every pricing experiment a success. And in short, that process consists of doing willingness to pay research into a company's marketplace. We analyze the data with AI software that we developed. And from that, we can predict sales volume and revenue with great accuracy at different prices. Now, when you use those predictions, we can tell our clients how they can gain pricing power, which means that they can increase sales volume at higher prices. And you don't need to be a math genius to know what that will do.
Well, that but the the secret sauce is probably interesting. But what I could we talk a little bit about you're using data that you gain and collect from the customer and from the marketplace and from
From the
competitors.
marketplace, yeah. It's really willingness to pay research is really a very different way of doing advanced market research, call it, right? And and there's two things that happen that is really important here. We first of all, I mentioned that we have developed our own AI software, and what that does with with the data is to make sure that the data is true, right? And we can actually look at the data in itself, and we can see if there are people who are lying, right? And obviously those get expelled. Um, and then what we do also in the software is that we segment the data in great detail.
Okay.
So what happened here is that we can tell our clients, focus on this customer profile because that's going to support higher sales volume at higher prices.
So
We tell them,
you can help them dial in on that ideal client profile. Because with my
correct,
experience is that they usually don't have good clarity about who that persona is or who that individual is, what that company segment is. But you can take that, help them get there, and then really refine that to a finer point.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah, and and um, let, but that's the beginning, and then we do the same thing with product features and functions or service features and functions. So we can say, use these features and functions and benefit statements in your marketing because it's going to support higher sales volume and higher revenues. Then we further do it with marketing. We say, use these channels in marketing and use these messaging um, because it's gonna give you a higher conversion rate.
So you're taking, especially with marketing, the guesswork or really mitigating the risk on which A/B test we should be running,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're doing that within your program, within your your
yes,
services.
exactly. Yeah,
How now you've just got a ton of questions, but
go ahead.
where so what type of data, what type of customer, what do they need to provide to like start this process, and what does that timeline look like to be able to um, have some effect? We're looking at months, year.
No, well, we work with companies in two different ways. Either we do like a single project, and that typically takes 6 or 7 weeks, or we work with a company over a year's time, where we do we start with a project and then we dig deeper into the data over the year, and then at the end of that year we redo the original project and do a gap analysis because things change, right?
Sure.
And the benefit of working on a yearly basis is, first of all, we can dig deeper into the data, and it's lighter on cash flow because it's a monthly fee as opposed to sort of a little, you know, it's not a higher fee, but it's spread over a shorter period of time. Um, and and the end result here for this is extraordinary.
Well,
I mean, we're not talking about you know companies who's doing it a little bit better. We're talking about transforming companies to the next level,
that was the
right?
word I was going to use, Per, is transformational.
Yeah,
Um, because
absolutely.
if we can focus our resources and our energies and our our human capital, all in the right direction for the right reasons,
Mm-hmm.
and messaging that properly and having it priced appropriately,
Mm-hmm.
the 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 out the outcomes there with revenue is literally going to be 5, 10 times over the course of a couple of years. They're going to really
Yep.
truly transform and grow, if
You.
they stay on purpose, stay on point,
Yep.
and don't get confused.
Yeah.
I,
Let
I,
me. Yeah. Let me give you and I think the audience will love this. I'm coming out with a book. It's being actually released next week, the Kindle version,
okay.
and um, I went back to some of our old clients and I said, "Here's an advanced review copy. Can you read it and say something nice?" And one prior client, a guy called Jim Minaric, he at the time were the CEO of a company called Sounds Unlimited. They're a holding company that owns many of the most popular home theater brands.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and he said to me, "Well, Per, your teachings help us to grow from about 100 million to way over 1 billion. Thank you."
That's a pretty succinct testimonial.
Yes.
That's that's incredibly powerful. That's that's getting more than you ask for, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When you do
And
that, that's
and and I mean, if we're talking smaller companies, we work with a company that has they have a phone system in the cloud, and we said you can quadruple your prices, and they did, not overnight, but over about a 9 month period. And then when I checked in with the CEO, he said, um, well, two things happened. He said, one, our sales volume increased with 25%. This is after quadrupling prices, right?
mm-hmm.
The other thing that happened was that we got a completely different set of customers, a much more professional customer. And to use the word he used, he said, and we got rid of the bottom feeders.
Mm-hmm.
So our customer support costs have gone down with 80%.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, I
All that
know.
falls to the bottom line.
Yeah.
So I would imagine. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that when you tell a client that they can quadruple their pricing,
Mm-hmm.
even double their pricing, there's a certain amount of disbelief and probably being unsure about how they go about that. Is
Mm-hmm.
that fair?
Yeah, there is, and we have and actually it's available on our website. I written a guide, the 7 steps to successfully increase prices and keep your customers happy.
Okay.
And in fact, we uh, another company, a SaaS company, when we started to work with them, there were about 10 million, right? Now 5 years later, they're about 130.
Wow. Yeah. That's a meaningful for a $10 million company. That's an incredible
Mm-hmm.
jump
Yep.
and
And
opportunity.
the first they had first time we said you can increase prices with an average 41%. We said, and they had 17,000 customers at the time. So they increased prices 41%, but because we've had helped them through that process of messaging and so forth, doing the right thing with pricing, the CEO got one phone call and two angry emails as a result of a 41% price increase and
Out of
zero loss
17,000,
of 17,000 and zero loss of customers.
3 customers out of
Well, they didn't even
17,000.
lose them. They were just upset, you know.
Ah,
So next year we help them double prices. And at that point, they lost like 7 or 8 customers out of the 17,000.
Well, so you're holding their hand, if you forgive my colloquialism,
Sure.
you're holding their hand um, after you've given them the data, you've
Yes.
explained to them why, because you can give them the research behind it, and then you're helping them like, this is what you need to do, this is how you tell this story, and this is how you
Yes.
message this piece. This is what your salespeople need to be saying, and and then you can walk with them through, do the same type of research again, and assess what can be done again.
Yeah.
Is that kind of
There's two things that is interesting here. We have something we call price training for sales, and price training for sales is all about taking that data that we discovered in the marketplace. What people are willing to pay more for, what messages will defend higher prices, and so forth, and teach this to salespeople so they know what messagings, what arguments, and so forth is most effective in defending higher prices.
that's actually one of the things when I'm interviewing a prospect, a potential client.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I want to hear them say, among many, is that they're growth minded and that they want to triple in 3 years or double in 3 years. But I want them to tell me that they are not competitive, they are more expensive than their
Mm-hmm.
competition, and have a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If they can articulate, we provide value, whatever that is, and our prices are, and that to me is somebody that's already have two steps in the journey that they
Yep.
need to head to.
Yep.
But what you're talking about is having them leapfrog ahead with an increase in pricing, um, but give them the reasons and the structure to do that, and the reasons why, because there is, especially salespeople, but we can get them salespeople past that, because you just remind them that their commissions are tied to the price point,
Yeah.
and if they elevate their sales skills and change their mindset, they'll make a lot more revenue and actually provide value and help their
Correct.
customers.
Yeah.
Um, so this is exciting. This is, Per, this is why I do this podcast, because I get to meet some interesting people and have these kind of conversations where I can learn. My head is just spinning about how this could help several of my clients currently.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to have a sidebar conversation at some point in the near future. Um, but this is really uh, really interesting and can add a lot of value. How did you said you've been in the States for how long? From you
I
moved
came
here
here in '94.
in '94,
Yeah.
and you run 4 companies.
Yeah. I actually came
Was
here.
this
I came here to establish and run a division for a fairly large public company, and we went from 0 to 72 million in 2 years. And that was in '94,
so
so when 72 million were real money.
that was real money? Yeah, exactly. Um, and so you've been in the game in for a long time, and you saw a need for companies to understand
Yeah, in these in
why.
yes, in these various companies I ran, we did experiments with pricing, as I said, and what I had learned in business school and so forth was so academic, and it was useless information. So, what is a better? I mean, I said, based on my own experience, what would I have needed to make these experiments to work? And that is then the process that we developed, and it's based on this willingness to pay research and then segmenting that data in detail, so we know
It-
how.
and that's really segmenting it, though. Sorry for interrupting, but segmenting is really where you can really drive that scale, because then you're focusing those efforts on those particular groups that are one appreciate, probably are an easier sale because they value what's being delivered and what's being discussed, and you're not trying to be all things to all people.
Correct.
I think trying to be that the the smallest viable, like Seth Godin talks about that,
Yep.
right? The smallest viable audience, and doing the best work you can.
Yep.
But you did this. You created the company almost as an extension of your
Yes.
experiments to validate and to build something,
Yes.
which is um, ballsy. That's like an aggressive move that you had to have known that it was your experiments were headed in the right direction and they worked, and sometimes they
Yep.
didn't work. How did you do that as an individual? You just took certain segments
Well,
and when you're
in
running a company.
no, but what I in these various companies, what we did was that we did these experiments and we couldn't figure out why they some worked and some didn't, because we just didn't have the knowledge. And so it was the when I started my own practice, then it was about saying, I mean, I said to myself, what is it that I would have needed? What information would I have needed to understand why an experiment worked or not, right? And
It's
that,
just it's asking that deeper
yeah,
question.
exactly. And that's the that's the process that we developed, and then eventually we developed this software that we're using, and I mean, there's obviously a company behind me. I'm not a one man band, um,
Sure, but you're the
but I'm sort of the
conducting the band.
I'm sorry.
You're the
Yeah.
maestro. You're the maestro.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. So I like I said, we're gonna have a conversation because my wheels are turning here. I think there's some
Hmm.
synergies, um, and I'm all about trying to help these companies go from 10 to 20 to 10 to
Yeah.
30, and you're really, if they're set up properly, you can 10 times that. You can really help
Hmm.
them. So I'm excited to have this. What's your biggest challenge in getting this story out to the world?
Well, if you, I think the biggest challenge is really that because business schools put so little emphasis on pricing in general, and don't put emphasis on how you can use pricing as a lever to drive the company to the next level. People are simply ignorant. They let me tell you a story. Um, I was in contact with this CEO of a company, a SaaS company, and um, and he told me that, oh, we decided that our price is going to be $165 a month per user, and then he continued, um, I don't know if that's the right price. He said maybe it should have been 99, maybe it should have been 250, um, but 165 just felt good.
I'm sorry. That's that's
Yeah, it's
crazy.
crazy.
Just
and
felt good.
and and um, I mean so that's one issue. The other is that so many CEOs believe that if they just increase price a single percent, they're going to lose all their business. And in fact, a company we recently helped had just one of these. I mean, they said uh, the guy said, I'm the new CEO. I've been in this role now for 3 months or 6 months or whatever it was, and the previous guy were scared out of his wits to increase price because he thought he's going to lose all the business, you know. And we took them from
Hmm.
200 to 250 million in 3 weeks. Yeah,
So
fear.
fear is what fear and
Yeah.
ignorance is, um, and then you basically shine the light on the
Hmm.
facts to help them see what's being not not left on the table, but what's appropriate,
Well,
what where you get
correct. And
value.
I mean, there's a couple of things to consider. The first off, you have to realize which business you're in, right? And one of the examples,
Mm-hmm.
two examples here. First off, look at Red Bull, right? Their business is in the extreme sports entertainment, and they monetize that by selling an energy drink, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and another, I read this interview a couple of years ago with the CEO of Rolex, and he was asked the question to make a statement of the Swiss watch industry, to which he answered, "I don't know. We are not in the watch industry." Right? He's
You
in
mean
the lifestyle industry. Yeah. So he understands what
yeah,
business he's in, and then he monetizes that by selling, watches.
that's a real. I mean, I'll dumb it down to a real general statement that it's most people think they're selling the widget that they talk about in business school, and it's really not
No.
the widget because you're just a
Yeah.
commodity at that point. It's what you offer to. It's the
Hmm.
problems you solve. It's how you address. I mean, that to me, that's if you don't have that understanding, you don't have that positioning in your own mind. There's no way to help your customer and your future customers to understand what it is you're really doing, and no way to
Yeah.
position your brand.
Well,
I mean, those
yeah,
are very
quoting somebody else, Peter Drucker, who that is. I mean, he's
sure.
said to be the founder of modern management, and I mean, he died 15 years ago, unfortunately. But he said, "Your customers are not buying a drill; they're buying a hole." You know?
Mm-hmm. That's one of his most famous
Yeah.
phrases. And when you say that to some people, they look at you
Yeah.
like, "What?" And you have to help. You got to walk them back and help them understand what that what's really important. And how you get the whole is important, and your widget's going to help them get there. But that whole is especially like say like
Hmm.
the aerospace industry, right? Those holes have certain very narrow specifications, and there's certain things that have to happen before
Yeah.
the hole is drilled, and tools have to be put away. I mean, all of the things that Drucker talked about. Um, that's one of his most famous, and I think that really kind of sums up you're
Yes.
what you're up against when you try to help somebody see that just raising prices is going to
Yeah.
help their business, and not being fearful. So so one last question here, but then I want to go back to the
Hmm.
book and the guide. But well, sales and cigars. I want to come back to, do you have? And I live in California, so I know it's difficult to have a cigar in California. But do you have a relationship with cigars in your life or at some point in
No,
time?
I've never really smoked anything, to be honest. But I do have this, I'm a native Swede, and we have a saying in Swedish, if I translate it, is that somebody comes in to a room and they say, "I smell a gentleman," meaning the cigar, but I don't see any. I think that's funny.
No, that's an awesome phrase, and I'd never heard that before. It's a truly a
As
Swedish.
far as I know, yeah, I've never
Um,
heard it in any other. I mean, I speak a few languages, but I never heard anything similar in any other language. Oh,
that's one of the advantages that Europeans have, that we get so wrong in this country. We do not teach our children when they're little is when they
yeah.
should be learning multiple languages, and and expecting everybody to speak English is not fair, and it really holds
No.
us back, I think. But and the Swedes that I work with, um, I think George speaks
Mm-hmm.
5 languages, and he thinks in two, which
Oh,
blows
that's
my mind.
interesting.
That being able to think about something in English and think about something in Swedish, it depends upon who he's with in the context, but he can go either way. And I only know one other person that when I was in high school, I dated a girl
Mm-hmm.
who was from Poland, and she had immigrated here with her family, and she was about 8 or 9 years old. So she spoke perfect English with no accent, and she spoke
Mm.
Polish with no accent. She just the timing
Yeah.
of it somehow worked. But when it was, I know we're way off topic here, but when she would
Mm-hmm.
dream when she was asleep, she would speak to her parents and family in either Polish or Ukrainian. But when she was speaking to her friends,
Yeah.
it was always in English, and it went back and forth. To me, that's
Well,
I don't know. I think
again, if you have time for another story, I was sitting in this in Germany in a restaurant in a guest house where I was staying, and in the next table there was 4 people having a conversation. Now, um, and they spoke 4 languages. They spoke English, German, French, and Italian. Now, that's not so unusual that each person is speaking a different language and you have a conversation. What was unusual is that they changed language all the time. So one guy said something in English, and the next time he spoke Italian, and the next time he spoke French, and then maybe back to English again, and then German. You know?
and it was clicked because of
Yeah,
somebody else saying something in
in
French,
French,
and they
yeah,
would
you
respond
know,
and back and forth.
yeah,
Interesting. That's a cool story. Like I said, I think we get that wrong in our country, and because I tried to learn French late in high school and in university, and
yeah. It's
did
really
not go
hard
well.
to learn
It was not.
another language when you're old, so or
Yeah,
older.
when you're old. so let's go back to the
Yeah,
Kindle version. Will come out on
the
Amazon this
Kindle
week.
version comes out on um, Tuesday, August the 8th, I think it is. Um,
Okay.
my publisher has convinced me that we should have a price promotion for the first week or so. So it's going to be like 199 or something like that before it goes up to the regular price.
Oh, I was thinking it'd be like 199 and
Well,
then come down to
they have a different opinion.
Yeah, I
And
bet.
the
I bet.
hard copy is coming out in first week of November, and
Okay. So I'll have all.
the
What's the
title is
title of
called
the
The
book?
Price Whisper. The Price
The
Whisper, and
Price
then there's a
Whisperer. That's your
subtitle,
nickname.
An Holistic Approach to Pricing Power.
Ah, I like it. Okay. And then we'll put that in the show notes for folks, and then we'll have you also referenced the guide
Yes.
on the website, um, which 7 steps to successfully increasing prices. That will help
Oh,
mitigate some of the
absolutely.
fear
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
a CEO.
There's 2 parts of this. One is a understanding in detail what customers are actually willing to pay for your product or service, right? And that comes from that willingness to pay research. The other is to craft messaging, and both internally and externally. Internally, you need to have the company understand that this is what we're going to do, and there's a reason why we can increase our prices. And these are the messages, and
Yeah,
these are the statements you should use as salespeople to defend this, right?
And you're helping change the mindset
Yes.
within the organization, and helping change the messaging going outside of the organization. And one of those without the other is likely to fail
Yeah,
if
you
you only
need
have
both.
one piece of
It
that,
it
because
it
yeah, the people
Yeah,
need to
it's a little
understand
bit
why.
of, it depends a little bit about the company's circumstance, but if you really want to make this really successful, you do want to make sure that you want to have everybody in the company on the bus, right? And
Well, it's a culture thing too, right? If you really want people to, and I'm thinking of a sales culture. If you really want people to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish and what the real goals are, from a strategic point of view, you have to not only tell them the strategy, but you have to help them understand what that means to
yeah,
them on a daily,
yeah,
weekly, and monthly basis. How does this affect them? What do they need to do to participate? And that
yeah,
helps them connect the dots. And I see a lot of CEOs use all the warm and fuzzy words and put the posters up, but they don't help the individuals
yeah.
make that connection. And I don't think that's on the individual. I think that's on the leader to
There's
share
a
that why.
if you don't know, have you heard of OKRs? I think
Mm-hmm.
I mean, OKRs was invented by Andy, what's his name, one of the co-founders of Intel,
Oh,
um, Andy Grove.
yes. I'm drawing
Andy
a blank
Grove.
because I've got the.
Um,
Yep.
and actually, I have a mentor who worked for Andy Grove at Intel. Um, the I mean, he invented it, and I think it's brilliant because it makes the goals are set sort of by executives, but then how you meet them comes from the organization. So by automation, everybody's on the bus.
Yeah, and you have to help
Yeah,
them get there,
absolutely.
like you said, automating it and telling the
Yeah,
story and giving them the why. That's a great example. So, um, I
thank
here I
you.
really appreciate this was a great conversation. I think we'll can have a couple more conversations here going forward. We'll have all these resources in the show notes, and if anybody has questions, what's the best way to gather more information? The
Yeah,
website, reach
I
out,
mean, one way you can
LinkedIn. What's
always
your
do is to do a Google search for the Price Whisper. That's a lot easier than my name.
okay? That's probably true.
So,
Definitely true. All right. Thank you very much. I really
well, thank you
appreciate
so
the
much,
time.
Walter, and
Thanks.
thank you for having me on the show.